They said it was an accident. For over 40 years, that was the story the world was told about Natalie Wood, Hollywood's golden girl who went overboard one dark November night. But when witnesses began to speak and evidence reappeared from forgotten files, the picture changed. What really happened on that yacht wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a story of fear, control, and silence, one that Hollywood tried to bury. The night that changed Hollywood. On November 29, 1981, the body of 43-year-old actress Natalie Wood was found floating in the cold waters off California's Catalina Island. She was dressed in a flannel nightgown, a down jacket, and wool socks, not exactly what someone would wear for a midnight swim. The news sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Natalie wasn't just another movie star. She was a legend, known for Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, and Miracle on 34th Street. To the public, her life seemed perfect. Fame, beauty, success, and a glamorous marriage to actor Robert Wagner. But that illusion would shatter before dawn. Natalie had spent Thanksgiving weekend aboard the yacht Splendor with Wagner, her Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. What was supposed to be a relaxing getaway quickly turned into one of Hollywood's darkest mysteries. The group left Marina del Rey on November 27th and anchored near Avalon. The weather was rough, cold winds, rain, and high waves, but Wagner insisted on moving the yacht to a more secluded spot called Two Harbors. Privacy, he said, but that isolation would become fatal. That night, the four went ashore for dinner at Doug's Harbor Reef, the island's only restaurant. Waiters recalled them laughing, drinking champagne and cocktails, far more than they should have. By 10:30 p.m., they were visibly intoxicated. When they returned to Splendor, something changed. According to later statements, Wagner grew jealous of how close Natalie and Walken seemed, particularly after Walken encouraged her to keep pursuing her career instead of focusing on marriage. The argument grew heated. Captain Davern remembered Wagner slamming a wine bottle on the table and shouting, "What are you trying to do? I folk big my wife." Sometime after 11 p.m., everything went silent. Around midnight, a woman on a nearby boat, Marilyn Wayne, heard a voice crying out across the dark water. "Help me! Someone please help me! I'm drowning!" The cries continued for nearly 15 minutes, followed by a man's calm voice saying, "Okay, honey." Then nothing. Despite the screams, no search was launched. It would be more than 4 hours before anyone called for help. The Coast Guard was finally alerted at 3:30 a.m., and the rescue boat didn't arrive until 5:11 a.m. By then, it was too late. Natalie's body was found floating a mile from the yacht, while the small dinghy, the Prince Valiant, was discovered beached nearby, still tied as if it had never been untied at all. Wagner claimed she must have gone out to secure the dinghy and slipped, but those who knew Natalie couldn't believe it. She had a lifelong fear of dark water. Her mother had once told her a psychic predicted she would die by drowning, and Natalie never forgot it. Friends said she would never, ever step into the ocean alone at night. So how did she end up there? From child star to Hollywood icon, the rise and the cost. Long before her name became linked to tragedy, Natalie Wood had lived under pressures no child should face. Born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko on July 20, 1938 in San Francisco, she was the daughter of Russian immigrants Maria and Nikolai. Her mother believed fame was their escape from poverty, and little Natalie was her hope. Her path to Hollywood began by chance. In 1942, when she was 4, a film crew spotted her in Santa Rosa and gave her a tiny role. Soon after, she appeared briefly in Happy Land, catching the attention of director Irving Pichel, who saw rare talent in her. He kept his promise to help her, and by 1946, she was starring with Orson Welles and Claudette Colbert in Tomorrow is Forever. When she couldn't cry on cue, her mother tore apart a butterfly in front of her to force real tears. The moment scarred her, but the performance stunned everyone. Wells later said, "She didn't act from the script, she acted from the heart." By age 9, Natalie was a familiar face, playing Gene Tierney's daughter in The Ghost and Mrs. Muir and winning hearts in Miracle on 34th Street. The world saw a bright, innocent girl. Few saw the exhaustion behind her smile. She worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, while studying on set to keep up with school. Her mother's obsession with perfection left little room for childhood. At 16, Natalie was no longer a child star. She was Hollywood's next leading lady. Her role in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean made her a cultural icon and earned her an Oscar nomination. But behind the success was a darker reality. During filming, she began a relationship with 43-year-old director Nicholas Ray, a man nearly 3 times her age. What the tabloids called romance, Natalie later described as confusion and pain. It was the first of many lessons that Hollywood didn't see her as a girl, only as a commodity to be used and controlled. Love, jealousy, and the Wagner marriage. Natalie Wood grew up believing in fairy tales, and Robert Wagner seemed to be hers. At 10, she had pointed to his photo and said she'd marry him one day. A decade later, she did. In December 1957, they wed in Arizona, becoming Hollywood's golden couple. Glamorous, adored, and constantly in the spotlight. But behind the perfection were cracks. Natalie's fame rose fast. Oscar nominations, major films, endless attention, while Wagner's career stalled. The imbalance fed quiet jealousy. By 1961, rumors spread that Natalie had caught him in a compromising moment with another man. True or not, their marriage collapsed. They divorced in 1962, leaving Natalie heartbroken at just 24. She tried again with British producer Richard Gregson, marrying him in 1969 and welcoming daughter Natasha a year later. For a while, life seemed calm, until Gregson's affair with her secretary ended it all. Once again, Natalie was alone. Then, in 1972, fate brought Wagner back. Both older and divorced, they reunited and remarried that July on a yacht off Malibu. It looked like a second chance, complete with another daughter, Courtney, in 1974. But those close to them said old habits returned. Wagner's jealousy, Natalie's restlessness, and constant arguments behind closed doors. By the late 1970s, she worked less, focusing on family, until Brainstorm came along, a film co-starring the charming Christopher Walken. Wagner didn't like it. Tension grew on set, and jealousy followed them home. When the cast took a short break for Thanksgiving 1981, Wagner invited Walken to join them on a weekend trip aboard their yacht, the Splendor. It was meant to be a getaway, but it became the beginning of the end. The investigation reopens, secrets, lies, and new witnesses. For decades, the official story stayed the same. Natalie Wood had died in a tragic accident, but those closest to her knew there were unanswered questions. Too many of them. Her sister, Lana Wood, never accepted the explanation. She kept pushing, writing books, appearing on talk shows, and demanding to know why no one had looked deeper. Natalie was terrified of dark water, Lana repeated again and again. She wouldn't have gone near it willingly. Her persistence kept the case alive long after the world had moved on. In 2000, nearly 20 years after Natalie's death, a familiar voice from that night finally broke his silence. Captain Dennis Davern. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Davern revealed disturbing new details. He claimed that the night Natalie disappeared, there had been a violent argument on the yacht. Wagner had accused Christopher Walken of trying to seduce his wife, smashing a wine bottle and shouting, "What are you trying to do? Sleep with her!" Davern said that after Natalie went to her cabin, Wagner followed her below deck. Minutes later, there was shouting, a loud thud, and then silence. Davern's story didn't stop there. He alleged that when he realized Natalie was missing, Wagner prevented him from acting. He told me not to turn on the floodlights, not to start the engines, and not to call for help, Davern said. He wanted to keep it quiet. For years, Davern's claims were dismissed as gossip, but he refused to back down. In 2009, he published a book, Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor, repeating his account in full detail. He described Wagner returning to the deck, tousled and sweating, and the chilling moment when Wagner told him, "She's gone." By then, new investigators were paying attention. In November 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officially reopened the case, citing new information and inconsistencies in witness statements. The timing wasn't random. Hundreds of people, including former law enforcement officers, had signed petitions demanding that the case be re-examined. In 2012, the coroner's office made a stunning decision. Natalie Wood's death certificate was amended from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The updated report noted bruises on her body that were consistent with assault, not just with a fall. Then, in February 2018, after 6 years of re-investigation, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department publicly declared Natalie's death suspicious and officially named Robert Wagner a person of interest. The lead investigator, Lieutenant John Corina, said Wagner's story simply didn't align with what other witnesses had reported. "I haven't seen him tell the details that match all the other witnesses," Corina explained. "His version of events just doesn't add up." Despite mounting pressure, Wagner refused to cooperate with authorities. He declined every interview request, never submitted a new statement, and avoided public comment whenever the case resurfaced. To this day, he has never sat down with investigators since the case was reopened. Walken, meanwhile, remained largely silent, but in a 2012 Playboy interview, he offered a theory. He claimed Natalie must have gone out to secure the dinghy, which was banging against the yacht, and slipped into the water. But even he admitted it was only speculation. "What happened that night?" he said. "Only she knows." Investigators didn't agree. The bruises, the delay in calling for help, the conflicting accounts. None of it fit the picture of a simple accident. They pointed to the 4-hour gap before the Coast Guard was contacted as the most suspicious detail. In cold water, survival time is measured in minutes, not hours. If the alarm had been raised right away, Natalie might have been rescued. By 2025, the case still hasn't led to charges, but new voices continue to emerge. Witnesses from nearby boats have come forward, including Marilyn Wayne and her boyfriend, who both stand by their account of hearing a woman cry for help, followed by a man's dismissive response. Others recall seeing lights on the Splendor flicker on and off during that same window of time, suggesting movement on board long after Wagner claimed everyone had gone to bed. Dark secrets and the final truth. What Natalie feared most. To understand Natalie Wood's final night, you have to look far beyond that stormy deck on Catalina Island. You have to go back to her childhood, to a young girl who learned early that pain and performance often went hand in hand. From the outside, Natalie was the picture of Hollywood perfection. The flawless smile, the red carpets, the magazine covers. But inside, she carried wounds no one could see. In 2021, her younger sister, Lana Wood, revealed a secret that changed how the world saw Natalie forever. In her book, Little Sister, My Investigation into the Mysterious Death of Natalie Wood, Lana described a night in 1955 that Natalie had buried in silence for decades. Natalie was 16 at the time, already a rising star, and her mother, Maria, had arranged a meeting with one of Hollywood's biggest names, actor Kirk Douglas. He was powerful, admired, and connected, someone who could help her career. But what happened that night at the Chateau Marmont Hotel wasn't opportunity. It was horror. When Natalie returned home, she was shaken, her clothes disheveled, and her voice trembling. She whispered something to her mother, who pulled her into the car and told her never to speak of it again. Years later, Natalie confided in Lana, finally breaking her silence. "He hurt me, Lana." Those 4 words carried the weight of everything she'd kept hidden: the fear, the shame, the betrayal. In an industry that prized silence, Natalie learned the cost of speaking out. She didn't tell the police, she didn't tell the press, she just buried it and kept working. That night marked a turning point in her life. The charm, the ambition, even the perfectionism that defined her career all came from a need to stay in control, to make sure she was never powerless again. But Hollywood wasn't a place where control was easy to keep. Behind the glamour, Natalie's world was full of manipulation, studio contracts that dictated her image, directors who blurred professional and personal boundaries, and a mother who saw her as an investment. Every role she played, the broken girl in Splendor in the Grass, the doomed lover in West Side Story, felt like a reflection of the pain she couldn't talk about. Her lifelong fear of dark water began around that same time. Her mother had once told her that a fortune teller predicted she would die by drowning. It sounded like superstition, but to Natalie, it became something more, a symbol of everything she couldn't control. She often joked about it on set, but when she said she was afraid of deep water, she meant it. Friends recalled that she wouldn't even swim alone in a pool, and she refused to board small boats without someone she trusted. That fear wasn't just about drowning, it was about being trapped, about losing her voice, about going under and not being heard. And that's exactly what haunts people about her death. The eyewitnesses who heard her screaming for help said the cries lasted nearly 15 minutes. "Help me! Someone please help me! I'm drowning!" The woman's voice called out again and again into the night. No one came. No one answered, except for a man's calm, distant voice saying, "Okay, honey." Then the silence. The fear she'd carried her whole life, of being trapped in darkness, unheard, played out in the most literal and devastating way possible. Even decades later, it feels unbearable to imagine. Natalie Wood, one of Hollywood's brightest stars, died exactly as she feared she would, surrounded by people who could have saved her but didn't. The mystery of what happened that night on the Splendor may never be fully solved. But what's become clear is that it wasn't just an accident of fate. It was a tragedy built on years of silence, from the abuse she endured as a teenager, to the toxic power dynamics of her marriages, to the secrecy that defined the last night of her life. For the world, Natalie Wood will always be remembered as a star. But for those who knew her story, she's also a warning. A reminder of how easily truth can drown when people choose to look away. Do you believe Natalie Wood's death was really an accident, or was it something more sinister? Share your thoughts below. And if you'd like to see more stories uncovering Hollywood's hidden past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because some mysteries should never be forgotten.